Okay, so the first 2020 Democratic debates were on Wednesday night, and Tim Ryan ended up getting absolutely destroyed by Tulsi Gabbard on the topic of the war in Afghanistan, U.S. imperialism, and the continued United States presence in the Middle East. And he tried to defend himself, and he only dug himself an even deeper hole. So here's that clip, and then I'll be back for more.
Today, the Taliban claimed responsibility for killing 2 American service members in Afghanistan. Leaders as disparate as President Obama and President Trump have both said that they want to end U.S. involvement in Afghanistan, but it isn't over for America. Why isn't it over? Why can't presidents of very different parties and very different temperaments get us out of there? And how could you?
I appreciate that question. So I've been in Congress 17 years. And 12 of those years, I've sat on the Armed Services Committee, either the Defense Appropriations Committee or the Armed Services Committee. And the lesson that I've learned over the years is that you have to stay engaged in these situations. Nobody likes it. It's long. It's tedious. But right now we have, so I would say we must be engaged in this. We must have our State Department engaged. We must have our military engaged to the extent they need to be. But the reality of it is this president doesn't even have people appointed in the State Department to deal with these things, whether we're talking about Central America, whether we're talking about Iran, whether we're talking about Afghanistan. We've got to be completely engaged. And here's why. Because these flare-ups distract us from the real problems in the country. If getting drones shot down for $130 million because the president is distracted, that's $130 million that we could be spending in places like Youngstown, Ohio, or Flint, Michigan, or rebuilding.
Congresswoman Gabbard, I'm going to give you 30 seconds, actually, to jump off what he said. He described engagement as the problem. Is that what you will tell the parents of those 2 soldiers who were just killed in Afghanistan? Well, we just have to be engaged. As a soldier, I will tell you that answer is unacceptable. We have to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. We are in a place in Afghanistan where we have lost so many lives. We've spent so much money, money that's coming out of every one of our pockets, money that should be going into communities here at home, meeting the needs of the people here at home. We are no better off in Afghanistan today than we were when this war began. This is why it's so important to have a president and commander-in-chief who knows the cost of war and who's ready to do the job on day one. I am ready to do that job when I walk into the Oval Office. Thank you very much.
Listen, I'm going to go down the line. I'm going to go down the line here. Well, you know what? You felt like she was responding. You get 30 seconds. Go.
Good man.
Fair enough.
I appreciate that.
I hear what you're saying.
I would just say I don't want to be engaged. I wish we were spending all this money in places that I've represented that have been completely forgotten and we were rebuilding. But the reality of it is if the United States isn't engaged, the Taliban will grow and they will have bigger, bolder terrorist acts. We have got to have some present there. The
Taliban was there long before we came in. They'll be there long before we leave.
Well,
we cannot keep U.S. troops deployed to Afghanistan thinking that we're going to somehow squash this Taliban that has been there, that every other country that's tried
I didn't say squash them. When we weren't in there, they started flying planes into our buildings. So I'm just saying right now,
we have an obligation. The Taliban didn't attack us on 9/11. Al-Qaeda did.
Well, I understand.
Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11.
I understand.
That's why I and so many other people joined the military to go after Al-Qaeda, not the Taliban.
The Taliban was protecting those people who were plotting against us. All I'm saying is if we want to go into elections and we want to say that we got to withdraw from the world, that's what President Trump is saying. We can't. I would love for us to.
Protecting Al-Qaeda right now in Saudi Arabia.
Well, stick a fork in him. Tim Ryan is officially done. I mean, he didn't have any chance to begin with anyway, but if he could have made the case that he somehow had a 0.00001% chance before last night, that's officially down to fully 0% now. Because he dug himself his own little hole there at the beginning, but everybody knew that the case that he was making, that Tulsi Gabbard was going to jump all over him for that. And what happened? Tulsi Gabbard jumps right in. Tim Ryan starts to waffle. He knows he's called out. He knows that he's not nearly as knowledgeable or correct on the issue as Tulsi Gabbard is. And then he starts flailing out, giving the same old talking points that we've heard for years now. And he completely embarrassed himself. Then he gets into the thing where he's basically conflating the Taliban with Al-Qaeda, which doesn't make his case seem any more coherent or intelligent whatsoever. And Tulsi Gabbard just continually drove him into the ground. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. She destroyed him. And she destroyed, like I said, if he had any slightest chance in the entire planet of thinking he could gain in the polls after last night's debate, Tulsi Gabbard completely cut that down. And I'm so happy she did, because I don't want anybody with a stance similar to Tim Ryan being able to hang around in this Democratic primary. If you have that kind of position where you still want the U.S. to be imperialist and involved in these conflicts because we have to, then yeah, that's a no for me. And I think that's a no for a majority of Democratic voters, if not just a majority of all of American voters at this point. Everybody is onto the scam of these regime change wars and foreign intervention. Nobody wants it anymore. The war in Afghanistan polls at best at 17% popularity. And to be honest, I'm surprised it even gets that. And Tulsi Gabbard, this is why people really love Tulsi Gabbard on the left. This is why she has such a dedicated base for her, is because they know that she's principled on these issues. They know that she's correct on these issues, and they know that she knows that she's correct on these issues. So she's not she's not one of these politicians where now if you really push on her from a centrist framing or from a Republican framing, that now she'll just cave and waffle on what she's fighting for. She knows what she stands for, and she is principled on it. And she has done the research. She knows that she's correct on these issues. So she can smile right in your face and give you a very coherent response back to why she is correct on this issue. And then people have no answer for it. And I know for a lot of people that are Tulsi fans last night, I'm a really big fan of Tulsi as well, that if you, when you saw Tim Ryan making that case, you knew that she was going to stand up and tell him that he was wrong. And she eviscerated him for it. And this is exactly why people on the left feel like they can trust Tulsi Gabbard with these issues, because they know that she's principled, and similar to Bernie Sanders' fashion, she's not as outspoken about it, but she will fight for those issues and she won't back down. And that's what people need on the left right now. Progressives need people who are willing to champion these values, that know that they're correct. And when they're pushed on them from a Republican framing or from a centrist framing, they don't waffle on them. They don't back down. They don't get mealy-mouthed. They stand up, they fight, and say, this is why I'm correct. And this is why this issue is a winning issue for the American people. And the American people will show you their support because of that.